Welcome to the Tuning In podcast, where we talk alignment, intuition, and our internal guidance system. We cover woo-woo topics in an approachable and practical way. I'm your host, Dana Evans of alignful.com. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. So, guys, I'm so excited about this week's episode. My friend and client, Stacy Killebrew, she's not a business owner. She's not an entrepreneur. She is a gal who lives in Texas. She works at a very large company, and she did an inner voice session with me. And she had such an amazing result. Now, let me just give you a little background. Stacy is not super into all the woo. She's open to it, but she's not super into it like a lot of the guests on this podcast. And she's just a regular gal, okay? And she is amazing, and she works so hard, and she's a wonderful friend, and she's just a wonderful person. And yet, like many of you may have experienced as well, she struggles with sometimes trusting herself. She has struggled with showing up for herself, speaking up, saying no, wanting to please people, and not prioritizing herself, not being willing to even go inward and pause and check in with herself. Have you experienced that by any chance? I know I have in the past, and I still do sometimes. So having Stacy share on this week's episode about her experience with the inner voice session is really amazing. In fact, you'll hear how she was thinking right before the session. Hint, it was not excitement. And what she has experienced since the session. And this was just one inner voice session. That was it. It was just the one session, and she's kind of taken it from there. So I think of these sessions like a personal training session. So if you've ever gone to the gym, in fact, a lot of gyms, when you join, you get access to a personal trainer, maybe a free session with a personal trainer, or a discount to buy a package. And these deep dive inner voice sessions, they're 2-hour sessions that I hold. They're like a personal trainer. You get to work new muscles. You get pushed a lot harder than you would maybe push yourself. And you get to experience new revelations and breakthroughs that then you can use in your regular life. And then there's the membership, which, by the way, I'm in the process of renaming my membership because the doors are opening July, I think it's the 27th. Yeah, July 27th, the doors to the membership are opening. So if you've been like, God, she talks about this all the time, mark your calendars because you'll have a chance to join. But the membership is like your gym membership. So that's the daily exercises, the daily practices. You learn different concepts and tools, and we cover kind of one topic every single month that helps you access your inner voice, access your inner guidance system, but also just practice going inward. It helps you practice slowing down and really start to redefine your life. Yes, I said redefine your life because that is what happens when you continually practice this work. Doing one session, one-off like Stacy, is extremely powerful. And if you double down on that and live it, right? Like she's been doing. It's really powerful. But we're also undoing so many years and years and years, for some of us decades, of a different experience, right? Of acting from the mind, of trusting other people, of placating and putting others first and not slowing down, that it can be really hard to make that transition. And so the membership, doing this daily, monthly, weekly, practicing this work of slowing down, going inward, trusting yourself, building your confidence, practicing speaking from that place, that inner knowing, that's where the magic happens. That is where your life literally changes. Because you flip the switch from always going external to internal, looking for validation, asking others what they think you should do, feeling badly about saying no, pushing your needs aside, and being too afraid to even check in on your needs. 2, checking in first, slowing down, asking yourself, listening to how something feels, and then acting on what you know is right for you from within. And then getting the positive feedback, the reinforcement, and the growth and shifts that happen from making those decisions every day from that place of inner knowing, from your inner voice. And the trajectory of your life actually changes when you start to do that. So this session that we're talking about on this episode is specifically, she had just a single inner voice session, and you'll see how powerful that is. And then I have the membership, which I'm changing the name to, I believe it's going to be the Tuning In Monthly. And it's a monthly membership where every month we cover an aspect of getting to know your inner voice and getting to know yourself again. And that is the change that I don't know what we do without that change. I don't know what we do without knowing yourself, appreciating yourself, and really operating from what is the best and highest good for you. I don't know what happens. And I don't want to know, because we all get to go back there and we all get to have the option to make that transition. And that's why I'm so passionate about this membership, which for now we're going to call it the Tuning In Monthly. If something new or inspired comes up, I'll let you know. But just one other side note before we get to the episode, I have been working behind the scenes, which is so exciting. I'm dancing right now because starting on the 20th of July 20th, so just over a week from when you'll be listening to this episode, is a challenge that I'm releasing called Discover Your Inner Voice Type. And this is a 4-day challenge, so the 20th through the 23rd of July. And it is designed to help you discover your inner voice type. And I've mentioned this a few times, have you ever noticed, like, maybe you've had a situation where you wanted to say, or you felt like you should say yes to something, and then you decided to say no, which was like the inspired choice, but you felt the should to say yes. And then you realize it was the best decision you could have made, right? Or have you been going around one day walking and then suddenly had like your intuition kick in and say, oh, turn right or turn left or go home. And then you found out that like something weird happened and you were glad you weren't there. Those are intuitive hits, right? That's your intuition talking to you. And it's your inner voice talking to you. But what happens is we say, well, Dana, I don't know that I can talk to my inner voice. I can't hear it. I can't hear my intuition. And what I'm saying is, yeah, no, it's already talking to you. It's consistently actually talking to you and trying to get in touch with you. But if you don't know how it communicates with you through one of these 5 types, then you may be missing the signs and you don't even realize it. So it's not a matter of whether or not you can connect or access your inner voice. It's whether you're able to tell how it speaks to you and then be able to listen through that medium. It's just like the love languages. If any of you are familiar with the 5 love languages, often partners have different love languages. So one partner, for example, one of my main love languages is acts of service. And so I'll do a lot of things for John, and like I'll clean the kitchen, I'll make him dinner, I'll like fold his laundry, I'll go get his car washed, I'll order him a gift, which is twofold, right? And he may not receive that way. So I may be doing all these things and feel like I'm giving him a ton of love, but his love language may be physical touch. And if I'm not giving him an arm scratch or a head scratch and giving him hugs and like, giving him like a little massage, then he might feel like I'm not providing love to him. And it's not that I'm not providing love, it's just he can't receive it the way I'm giving it. And so with your inner voice, it's similar. Your inner voice is communicating with you, but typically each person has a primary way that the inner voice is trying to communicate with them. And what happens is if you don't know what that method is, you don't know what to listen for. So it's always communicating with you. You just don't know what to listen for. And Stacy actually speaks about this in the episode of how her inner voice communicates with her. So mark your calendars for July 20th. I will give you a link next week. I think it's going to be alignful.com/challenge for how you can sign up for that challenge. It's really important that you sign up to get all of the information. So go to alignful.com/challenge if you're interested. Sign up, and I'll talk about it a little bit more next week. And if you feel called to do a one-to-one deep dive inner voice session, as Stacy described in this episode, you can do that at alignful.com/work-with-me. We'll put the link in the show notes, or you can just send an email to hello@alignful.com. and we'll get you more information. And I am running a little special right now. Anybody who signs up for a one-to-one session will actually get the first month of the membership that is launching at the end of this month. You'll get the first month free. So it's kind of fun to do the deep dive, do the personal training session, right? And then immediately get access to the membership so you can continue working on your gym exercises. So excited to work with whoever is called to work with me. So without further ado, here's this week's episode. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. As I mentioned on the intro, I am joined by my dear friend, Stacy Killebrew, and she is going to share some of her experiences with the inner voice work. We did a deep dive session, and she had some really great experiences, but also maybe the way she got into doing the session wasn't what you necessarily would have expected. So Stacy and I have known each other since 7th grade. Yeah.
So crazy.
So crazy. She's shaking and nodding her head. We know each other since 7th grade. We did gymnastics together, and we've kind of she's one of those friends where it doesn't matter how long we talk or not talk, we are still in connection, and it always feels like we've seen each other just like a week ago. So she did a session, and she's followed kind of the stuff I do, and she's always been very supportive, and I so appreciate that. But she wasn't like super gung-ho to do a session. I didn't make her, but I offered it to her. And so I kind of want her to share her experience and like what she did and all of that. So first of all, Stacy, thank you for being here.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And we are looking at each other. So if we giggle, it's because we're making faces at each other. So let me just like start off the conversation. We can kind of make this really organic, but why did you agree to have an inner voice session?
Great question. I think, wow, it's always been super interesting to me because part of me's felt pretty called to it and the work. I know we did a Just Lively class, and I've always felt called to it, but there's always just been a part of me that's been a bit resistant to it, just because it's one of those things that seems too good to be true, right? Like it should seem harder to kind of do the kind of work that you get through these sessions. So you had been talking to me about it, and I always just want to support you because I love you so much. And we're very similar, but we're very different. So sometimes I'm like, oh, this is outside my realm of understanding, but you were so passionate about it and it made me excited about it. So that was part of why I wanted to do it. And I'd been listening to Just Lively podcast for a bit and been hearing her experiences with it and everything. So I thought kind of for me, like, what could be the worst thing that could happen? Like, maybe you'll get something out of it. And if not, you've just been able to support Dana in something that she's really passionate about and loves doing. So that was kind of why I wanted to do it. In the moment, I was very resistant to doing it after I said I would do it. But in the moment, I was really looking forward to doing it.
That's interesting. So you were called to say yes, maybe by your inner voice. You're inspired to say yes in the moment, and then the mind can kind of take over. So I didn't know this, you felt this way. So this is really good because we can talk about this a little bit too. As you said, it seems too good to be true, and that it should be harder to get those kind of answers and results. What does harder mean? Like, why would it be more valuable if it was harder in your mind? What was
And
coming up?
and that's the thing too, right? Is we equate valuable with harder, which is not necessarily the case. It just didn't seem like feasible. I guess for me, I've in my life when I've had to work through problems or whatever it may be, it's never been easy. It's never been effortless or flowing, right? Like it feels like I'm kind of trying to like punch through a brick wall to solve problems. And you get there, but it's so effortful. So for me, I just had never encountered a time where I was able to work through something and have it be really no work at all. It's not work in the sense that you're striving for something, because it's work in the sense that you're shedding these layers or whatever it may be in that sense, but it was easy, you know? So I just had never kind of solved a problem in that way before. So it's right. Like, unless you know that it's possible, why would you think it should be easy like that?
Yeah, because you've had, previous experience and different experiences processing work,
Yeah,
and the work level was different and maybe even more painful. I don't know.
definitely. Yeah. We can talk about this later as we go into my experience with it, but it was emotional, but it was a really beautiful way to work through some issues that I was having that I didn't even know I was dealing with. And so we think, right, that it's supposed to be difficult and hard and painful to get through these issues, when in fact it can be easy and beautiful and emotional and transformative. So
Yeah. And that you don't have to, no pain, no gain.
right, it's crazy though, because so much of our culture is like that. Like, that's our thing, where if it's worth having, you should be working super hard for it. And that's not to say that you don't get great things through hard work, but those things should not be mutually exclusive.
Yeah. I went to your exercise class and I did not like it. It was too much hard work for me.
That one I do like. Those, yeah, that one is hard, but I do enjoy it. That one I don't look at it in that lens. Sometimes I hate it, but most of the time I love it.
She dragged me to a circuit training class, everyone, when I visited her in Texas. And I was like, well, I am not down for this. I want some bowstring, lighter, less effort, less effort.
And can we acknowledge the fact that you modified every movement that we did? And at one point, our trainer just came by and I was like, just let her go. Just let her do her thing.
I'm such a rebel on Gretchen Rubin's Rebel. And so I couldn't do it fast enough. Let's be really honest. And then I had to modify every exercise to make it bowstring, which made it slow. And then I couldn't figure out the actual move. And I'm like, how do you do it?
And you were at the end of it, you were doing moves that were way harder than anything we were doing. She was like doing bouncing, like standing handstands. It was insane. The strength it took to do them was like 10 times harder than the work we were doing. But you just didn't want to do the motions that we were doing.
Oh, it's funny. But you know what? I tried. And I'm so grateful I did that class. I would do it again too. You know that.
I know. I had a blast. If nothing else, you just made me laugh through the whole class, and that made it super enjoyable.
This is, everyone, if you don't watch my Instagram stories yet, this is why we watch Instagram stories from Dana. There's some entertainment factor. Okay, so that was a side note, but it's valuable information. Okay, so great. That is really helpful just to hear that from you. So then going into it, so let's say, what expectations did you have going into it, and or fears, or what was going on in your mind going into the session?
I think, and I don't know if this is an appropriate term to use. Is this acceptable anymore? But like, I was like, this is going to be so woo-woo. Like, I was like, just for me, I was like, maybe you'll get something out of it. But for the most part, I was like, you're just going to have to get through this. You're probably going to like laugh. It's going to be a little bit woo-woo. And I just know myself well enough to know that, like, going into it, I was very resistant. Like, I almost called you to cancel because I think there was a part of me that was just maybe not ready to get to that place, or just like we talked about earlier, like I just didn't believe that I could do something in that manner. So I almost called you to cancel it, but I was like, no, just do it because you'll regret later. But yeah, I kind of just thought like it was going to be an hour and a half and I'd get up and be like, that was fine. And, I got to support Dana and that was it. Like that was kind of my expectation going in. I didn't really think that it was truly going to help me.
And I didn't do the best job at setting the expectation for her because she had a meeting with her boss after our session. And now knowing your expectation going in, I get why you had that scheduled. But I do encourage anyone who does a session is try to do it for a time when you have space to continue to process afterward.
Yeah, and I still felt amazing the entire night afterwards, even after, but I can totally understand why you need it because it is a very emotional experience in a good way. So yeah, it's just you feel so light and high that you just kind of want to ride that out for the rest of the night.
Yeah, ride the wave. And I often call it like there's some aftershock that shows up, but you get to ride the wave of being in your being. It's super meta, but being in your being. So we operate from the mind. And Stacy, I commend her for doing this. And I have to be honest, I was expecting her to cancel. I had this feeling that morning. I was like, I feel like she's going to cancel, but I believe in aligned cancellation. So if she does, I trust that we'll reschedule. But she didn't. And it served both of us so well. But we operate from the mind and we operate from that beta wavelength, which are these really short, fast wavelengths. And our culture is kind of built around that. But just as we have the mind, we also have the inner voice. And you, the Stacy, you, the person, are the observer. So you can choose which frequency to tune into, which is why whenever we do the sessions, everyone, as so far that I've experienced, they get to their inner voice. And I sometimes have doubt. I'm like, oh, can I get them to their inner voice? Well, it's not me. It's that they are willing and able to shift into that receiving mode through, of course, I take you through some exercises to get there, but it's there. It's just waiting to talk to you. And it does sound woo-woo, but when we start to kind of shift our perspective of, well, who am I? Who are you? You're not just your mind. You're not your thoughts. You're the thinker of your thoughts. And when you start to understand life through that perspective, it shifts your understanding of reality, right? I mean, that's kind of what happened. Is you can share more on that, Stace.
Yeah, it was strange. I was just thinking as you were talking, I don't know if you remember this, but I laughed a lot in our session because, and it took me a while to get there to really let my inner voice talk. My mind fought a lot of times, especially when there were some more like heavy questions, but I just was laughing constantly because you'd ask me a question or my inner voice a question and my inner voice would answer so quickly and so assuredly, like they just knew the answer. And my mind would just start laughing because it felt so ridiculous to have like my inner voice be so confident with an answer. It was such a trippy experience because it did take me a while to get into it, right? Like my mind, this, Dana, is very much like loves to be in control. It's very hard for me to kind of get out of that headspace. I overthink a lot. So it took me a little while, but maybe not even that long. I don't know, Deanna. I don't do these very often, and you have a lot of experience with them, but it felt like I got there. It didn't take me quite as long to get there as I thought it was going to. But yeah, it was just a really beautiful, strange experience to just for an hour and a half just kind of let go and let my inner voice talk, and you just ask the questions that you felt my inner voice wanted to discuss. It was very strange and very beautiful experience for me.
Yeah, I think it took you maybe like 10 minutes to get into the inner voice state. And that's part of the process is you get guided into that. And then we don't force anything to happen. It's just we check in, we encourage the inner voice to come up. The reason the inner voice isn't coming up for most people, and you as a listener may be experiencing like, I can't hear my inner voice. It's not that you can't hear your inner voice, it's just that your mind is louder and the mind will hold on. So the inner voice, I think of it like an undercurrent. So it's always there. And sometimes it's a riptide. And then it like shouts at you and you're like, oh, like Elizabeth Gilbert moment, right? But it's always there. It's just that the mind is so scared. The mind is very scared because it is used to being in control. And even as a facilitator, like when I'm sitting there with you, especially when certain topics come up, and this happened with Stacy, it's like you can tell there's like a push-pull, like a little tugging going on where the mind wants to take over and say, I have a story, I know the answer, but you're already in that receptive state. So then you just remind the mind, exhale, right? Exhale, exhale, exhale the thoughts, and then slow it down, and then you can let it come through. So you did such a great job, Stacy. And, honestly, with any client, you never know what's going to happen, but the mind will place expectations. And I was really surprised as well of how deep of a connection you had. And it was like, once you got there, like, yeah, it maybe took a little bit of time to get there, but once you were there and you held that space and you were really connected and speaking so clearly. And the laughing also is not just the mind being like, what the hell, but it's laughing, just like tears, is a releasing of resistance. So the more we laugh, like the giggling, and inner voices tend to be really light and giggly anyway, and they can be really like sassy. Stacey's inner voice was pretty snappy.
Kind of was strange.
Yeah,
Like I'm not sassy in real life at all.
Yeah, right. Stacy's snappy too. It had a lot to say to you, and it was like, girl, and it kind of put you in your place, put your mind in your place a few times. And I mean, did that resonate with you? What was like, how did you feel during the session? Were you aware of what was going on? What was your experience?
I think I was. Yeah. I honestly think, like, looking back in hindsight, like, I think I wanted to get there. Like, I think that because, and I mentioned this, like, we'd done a little bit of this work before where we talked to my inner voice, but it had never been strong. And so I think I was like kind of right at that point where I was ready for it. I was still really resistant to it, but I was ready to get there. And then once I did, I feel like there was just like this sense of relief because I didn't know if I was going to be able to, or part of me even didn't know if I believed it, that I could talk to my inner voice, or that I had an inner voice. Like, because it does seem a little bit woo-woo, but then sinking into that and just hearing it and feeling it so strongly, I think once you connect to it in that way, it becomes a lot easier. Like, even today I was walking and I had been struggling with something the last couple of days, and prior to this, I never would have in a million years been like, hey, inner voice, and had this conversation. And I don't know, how long has it been since we had our session?
4 weeks.
4 weeks. Okay. And it's still so strong. Like, I was just walking, I'd ask a question, even before I get through the question, it's an immediate confident, nope, yes, whatever it may be. So I was definitely surprised at how like kind of easy it was to get to that place and stay in that place and then have it continue after the fact. I think because that was something I was a little bit worried about. I had this beautiful experience with you and my inner voice and this whole thing for an hour and a half. And then I was like, but then I have to go back to the real world where someone's not letting me like lay next to a candle quietly, asking me really emotional, beautiful questions. I'm going to have to like go back into the real world, but it just allows you to tap into something that's already there. And then you just kind of get to keep doing it. It was transformative, if you will.
I will. I accept. Because it is. And you described that so beautifully because, yeah, there is this fear of like, well, I can't operate this way. But that's what the beauty is it's like sometimes it's like opening the floodgates. Like, you didn't know you had this. And then it's like you open the gates and you're like, oh, wow, it's just there. You don't have to like get into this whole perfect environment in order to hear it. But like Stacy said, it's like sometimes when I'm recording a podcast, my inner voice just takes over. And then I kind of snap out of it. I'm like, oh, well, apparently my inner voice wanted to speak on this topic. And there you go. Back to the mind's perspective, because it is an alternative perspective and it's an alternative way to look at things. And it's always there. And if you're willing, right there, that's such a key point, Stacey, is that's why when we talk about like, do you want to have a session? I'm not going to choose people to have the session. Their inner voice needs to guide them. Now, it does often happen. You're not the first person, Stacy, who they booked it and then they got on and they're like, I don't know why I booked this. Like, I felt really inspired to do it. And then I was like, wait, what have I done? And so that's really common, but trusting that your inner voice connected you to booking this session in itself is like a testament to it speaking through you because you were ready, like you said.
Yeah, I think that we have this, a lot of people have a difficulty just trusting in something outside of themselves, right? Like, and I think that's for me too. I just feel like I'm very much responsible for all of my own actions. So it's, like I said before, it almost seems weird to kind of give up control of your issues or your problems, whatever it may be, to this other thing that's not tangible or it's like ephemeral. And but I do think we're called to do it, right? Like you asked me that, and it's not just because, I mean, I do love and support you to death, but I can love and support you without engaging. You know what I mean? So there was clearly something that was called to do it, but then just my old habits and my old stories were like, because right, I think sometimes it's just fear. We want to hold on to these things, and it's scary to put yourself in a position where you could potentially let go of them because we create stories around them. And yeah, I think it's just a little bit of a calling. I think we probably all have it, and it's just a matter of when you're ready to kind of get to that place.
Yes. And it's so interesting what you said, because you said it's hard to put our trust in something outside of ourselves. And yet, that is what we all do. We go outside for the answers. We're like, expert, tell me what to do. Guru, tell me what to do. Podcast host, tell me what to do. And yeah, it's great to get book, tell me what to do. It's great to gather information. And yet it pushes off our own trust, and it actually reinforces that you can't trust yourself. And the beautiful thing about your inner voice is it is you. Now, you may not be connected to it being you, but I asked your inner voice, like, who are you? Are you an alien inner voice? Like, what are you? Are you like a spirit living in Stacy? It's like, no, I am Stacy. Like, we're not tapping in. I mean, we could, but these inner voice sessions, I'm not trying to get you to channel a collective energy or Abraham Hicks or, bring in spirits or your angel guides. Like those, if you want to get really woo woo, like those are all somewhere. But this is just like changing the frequency of you speaking from yourself. And I've asked many inner voices, actually, maybe most of them, is did you choose this human? You chose to be with this human. This is your body. You've chosen this person. So you are this person. And a lot of them, like Stacy's inner voice, has been many different people. Stacy's just here in this lifetime. But go ahead,
So crazy.
Stacy. I just confused Stacy.
No, you didn't. I just like made me laugh because it's just such a crazy concept to think about. Like it's so crazy. And it's funny as you say that because, you say that it's been with more people than just me, but it's so interesting because you talk to your inner voice as if it's like separate from yourself. But at the end of the day, I end up feeling more connected to myself through that work with my inner voice. It's just, I think that was another thing too for me that was so surprising, is I just felt so connected to myself.
And sure of yourself.
Yes.
And trusting. And when you're in that energy, because the mind is the one that is afraid and scared and doesn't trust you and wants validation and has all the mind ego, has all these expectations, and your inner voice is more like your true north. And the mind tries to rationalize and logicize, which is a new word I've made up, logicize that. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And it can't. And so what do we do? What have we been trained to do in this society is if you can't measure it, then it can't be real. And look, like I can't measure this. All I can say is I've spoken to many inner voices, and people like Stacy, but then people who just kind of like found me and have never been exposed to Just Lively or any of this. And then they're like, I'm feeling actually tears come up right now as I'm saying this, because there is this consistency that shows up that you want to talk about crazy and mind-blowing. Try holding sessions for tens of different people, different personalities from different places, and getting very consistent messages. It's like, what? How is this possible? Because it is you, it is part of you, but it is you that is connected to the collective. You that is part of something beyond you.
Yeah. That's crazy. I can't imagine what it's like on your end to because I mean, like, I know how powerful my session was, but I can't imagine what that's like for you to have consistently have these sessions with people and have those experiences. Like, as much of a believer as I was after one session, like, that's just crazy. And I don't even know like the half of what you've experienced.
Yeah. Well, you can get to know it though because you've experienced it, right? And I get to bliss out. I mean, I love doing the sessions because what's more fun than talking to other people's like alter egos? Like, I just get to ask all these questions. I mean, nothing's off limits. The inner voices have a completely unique perspective. And one thing that we do in these sessions is your inner voice might say something like, hey, like if she starts tuning into me more, like she's going to have wild success. Like we want her to know what's possible for her. I said, what's possible? They said, wild success. I said, inner voice, can you tell me what wild success means to you? And I kid you not, it said dancing in the kitchen.
Okay, that might be my favorite answer ever. That's so great. I mean, but how beautiful is that, right? Like, and she or he, I don't know who you're working with, was probably, that wouldn't even cross their mind, I'm sure, to think like, when in our society, when you think wildly successful, what do you think? Like, oh, a night having fun in my kitchen. And is that what? Yes, that is wildly successful. Like, it's just the world and society and ourselves impose all of these like beliefs on us of what it means to be happy or successful or joyful, when in reality it's just so much simpler than that.
Yeah. And if we're willing to listen, yeah, if we're willing to listen. And because so much of our limitations are caused from limiting beliefs in the mind of what's possible for me and what's not. And if I don't believe this is possible for me and I want it, now I'm automatically in a place of lack and I feel sad and frustrated and unfulfilled. And, meanwhile, it's like we've had years of doing the right thing and doing what everyone expects of us. And then people get to this point and they're like, wait, I thought if I did everything right, I would feel good and fulfilled and happy. And then the real thing is, it's not that you did everything right, it's that you did everything for everyone else
Mm-hmm.
and not what was right for you. And now you're like, well, heck, how do I figure out what's right for me? And the answer is, well, we have to start going inward, pausing, listening. Well, how
Yep.
do I do that? Well, book a session, join the
But
membership.
Dana's like www.dana.com.
Mindful.com.
I mean, I wish I could like shout it from the rooftops, because obviously you're my best friend and I, think you poop rainbows. I hope that's podcast appropriate. But I would consider myself to generally be a skeptic when it comes to things like this. It's just, I am. I think I'm just a bit more of a skeptic in things. And like, I wish I could make everyone, not make, but guide them to it, because it was, I mean, I was crying and it was so unexpected. I don't even know what you asked me, but it just like came out of nowhere and hit me. And it was, I mean, I did therapy for years and I feel like I had more progress in kind of releasing these emotional beanbags, as you call them, in probably what took like 10 minutes of that session, maybe, where we were like really focusing on that. And I think therapy is great. And I think talk therapy is amazing. And it was very helpful for me. But I just, as a skeptic myself, I wish I could just guide everyone towards it, because I think, like I said, my life already since then has been better for it. Like, do I have hard days? Yes. Like, I don't wake up every day thinking like, oh, my inner voice tells me everything's fine, and so everything is fine today. Like, you're still human. You're still gonna have to like have those moments, but I have so much more confidence now that everything is just going to be okay. Because at any moment in time, I can be like, inner voice, am I okay? Yes. Is everything okay? Yes. Like, it will be okay. You're going to have some struggles, but yeah, it's just the sense of peace that you get from it. Not all day, every day by any means, but just a sense of peace that I didn't think was possible from just taking a moment. All it takes is a moment to just check in and say, inner voice, am I okay? Yes. And the answer is always going to be yes. It's crazy.
I'm tearing up.
Well, I'm so appreciative for you, Dan, because I think like you've gone down this path of just so much wanting to help people, and in a way that I don't think, right? Like, it's not like people are like, oh, it's not therapy, but it is better than therapy. Like, you've just dedicated yourself so fully to like training to help people in this really transformative way. And I'm just so proud of you. And I just feel lucky to be getting to experience it with you and then seeing how much you're helping other people. Like this is the kind of stuff that changes people for the better. And I just couldn't be more proud of you.
Thank you. This is why we're such good friends. I didn't prime her to say any of that.
She paid me to say that. I'm getting paid very well.
But I really appreciate hearing that from you because, again, hearing from your perspective, it is, I mean, I believe in this. Like, I wouldn't go down all this, like, this is the non-traditional way. This is, in a way, an uphill battle of, like, trying to convince people that this is what they need. And I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe in it. And I agree, Stace, like, it is transformational. And once you kind of experience it, and especially like this is why these sessions are so cool because they're 2 hours. And actually, Stacy, we only did a 90-minute because she had a call with her boss afterwards. But, typically they're about 2 hours and it gives you tons of space and you are living as that experience, which is very different than kind of that day-to-day, like checking in and hearing from it. So it's always there, but to actually live from it, it does change you. Because you were there and you experienced it and you can't unknow that. No, as an inner voice shared with me, no with a capital K, unknow.
You really can't. That's what I was saying. It's so much easier for me to tap into it now. And it's just, you can't ever forget that it is there and it is there to just help you and guide you. It's so true. That's what I feel like I've never been more confident and not necessarily like walking around like confident, but just peaceful, like just peaceful knowing now. And that's amazing. I'm telling you, 90 minutes, when I went into it, I was like, oh God, 90 minutes is a long time. Like I was like, this is going to be a long 90 minutes. And when you were like, it's time to be done, I was like, what? We've only been here for like 10 minutes. It felt so short. Like I could have easily stayed there for hours longer. It was so easy and it flowed and you were a dream. You made some weird noises and I loved every moment of it.
I did. I make weird noises to like, so the mind can get distracted. And then I walk around the house after any session. I'm like, and John's like, can you please stop? But it's like soothing myself afterward. Because, when I'm in the sessions, I just love it. But I'm like moving, I'm yawning, I'm like doing some weird unconscious Reiki stuff because it is energy. And even though we do it via no video, it's just audio, usually via Zoom, I'm in the energy of the person. So like when Stacy was going through a beanbag, which we've talked about on the podcast, it's like an emotional, trapped emotion that is ready to come out and release. I'm with her in that. I'm not taking it on, but I'm sensing it. I could feel the moment it was gone. I felt the energy shift. And then I check in, I'm like, inner voice, like, what's going on? How is it? And it's like, it's gone. I'm like, well, I knew it was gone, but I needed to ask her inner voice because we are very connected and not just because it's Stacy. I mean, I've done this with strangers and it's just, we have this very powerful energy exchange and it's so beautiful to witness and to hear people's experience.
Yeah, that was probably the strangest part of all of that. That was incredible. Like that was for me, I felt it physically. Like I was just laying down the entire time with my little candle next to me. And it was such a strange moment because I could feel it in my body and I could see light. It was a very strange moment for my skeptic mind because I in no way thought that I was going to have this intensely like physical experience while I was just laying there talking to my inner voice. But yeah, it was incredible feeling that kind of leave me. And it's to hear that you could sense when it left was the craziest part to me.
And that's what's beautiful about the beanbags is like you can clear them and then they're gone. It's just trapped emotion that never got processed. And so the good thing is once it's gone if you get through all of it. But the other side of that is we have hundreds. So we can keep processing the beanbags.
It's so fascinating to me too, right? Like once more people know about this, like the ability to help people just release this emotional pain that they've been carrying around with them, it's like life changing. And I'm so fascinated by where this is going to go, because I think it's right. It's gaining traction more and more with people, but I just feel like it's such an unutilized tool to help people. I'm excited. I'm just excited for
It's
more
too
and more people
easy.
to, yeah, yes, we've been conditioned, like good things come to people who work hard. Like, but why does that have to be the case? You know, why
Yeah, and
can't it
what
be
becomes
easy?
possible if it's not that way? What if we start saying, I mean, one of my favorite mantras is, how can this be easy? The
Oh, I
second
love
something gets
that.
challenging, I'm like, how could this be easy?
I love that, Dan. I'm going to start using that. Because yes, I love that. Like, I feel like we take pride in hardship, and that's just ridiculous.
It's old, is what it is.
Yeah.
It's old story, and it served a purpose. It did serve a purpose, but as
Mm,
we evolve as humans, our ways of being can evolve. And that's what this whole like collective consciousness shift is happening, is we're evolving. And unfortunately, there is sometimes pain in the evolution,
sure.
and you have to, get through the mud. But on a very personal one-to-one level, is I feel like the sooner you start doing this stuff, the sooner you start tuning inward, the sooner you start checking in before you take action out, the easier things are going to become for you, and the more enjoyable, and the more you can then vibrate at that higher level and hold that space for other people. Because not everyone does this, not everyone knows about this, not everyone has access. And even though you don't have to demand everyone do it, anyone can do it. Like, that's what I love about these sessions is, yeah, you pay to do the session, and it's like, it's pretty intense. Like, I don't know that I could do 2 in a day, maybe 2 max in a day, because it's a powerful energy exchange. But then you have the tools. Now, does that mean that I don't do sessions? No, I totally do inner voice sessions, because sometimes I just want to go deeper and like bliss
Mm,
out.
yep.
Or sometimes I want someone to help me with like something that my mind is really attached to and it's not letting me in. But for day to day, like you're experiencing, like on your run, like it will talk to you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's free.
Yeah, it's weird. It's even in small moments where things I take joy in now, I still talked about. Like, I love to run now. Like, running has become a passion of mine. But there will be some days where my body is just not feeling as much, but I still get so much joy. But I'll be out on my run and be like, body, do I need to run this whole time? Or no. Like, is it okay if I run the whole time? Sure. But my inner voice is always like, just do whatever feels right for your body. And it's constantly saying that to me. And it's been so beneficial, because there will be days where I run super fast and it feels great. And there'll be days where I just walk. And I used to feel a lot of shame in that and not performing at a certain level. And now I just feel so much peace in knowing that my body's just going to do whatever feels right for the moment. And so it's great, because I tap into my inner voice in moments of struggle, or when I'm feeling anxious or pain, but then also in moments of joy. And it kind of enhances that joy even more, which is a really cool thing. So it's not just like your inner voice is here to talk you through painful situations. It's also to enhance your joyful situations.
I love that. And that is such a good point, because yeah, it's always there and it's always guiding, and it always wants to talk to you. I mean, it does enhance that joy. They tend to be quite joyful and giggly. So when with yours, I wanted to ask you this specifically because you've dealt with quite a bit of anxiety in your
Mm-hmm.
past.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And a lot of that comes from that high beta, really active mind. What is your relationship to anxiety and the inner voice? Like, how does it feel? What's the difference? Do you use it? All those things.
Yes. So I don't know if I mentioned this to you yesterday. I had just a hell of a day. I had had an experience this weekend that had just been kind of like sitting with me. And I'm the kind of person that, like, once my anxiety starts, I just sit in it, and I have a really difficult time getting out of it. I just kind of spin narratives in my head over and over and over again. That feels comfortable to me. Like, that kind of painful moment feels very comfortable to me and very safe, because it's kind of how I've always dealt with it. I went out on a walk yesterday, and I was just asking my inner voice about it, this situation specifically, and it was just so clear and so confident, and it didn't erase all of my anxiety, right? Like, I think I'm still pretty new to it, so it's not one of those, flip a switch and you're automatically perfect at it, but I could just feel it easing it a little bit for me, which was really amazing because it's not really a tool I've had before, honestly. Like I just didn't have it. There's you exercise and that will help. And I think that's a massive tool. Like it actually does. But that was like one of the first times where I was in the middle of a really, really anxious day. And my inner voice was just like, you're okay. And I could really believe it because I feel so connected to it. It is me. So that's been a really, really powerful tool for me because anxiety is something I do struggle with a fair bit.
And that's, oh man, it's such a good point because you've brought this up now twice is comfort in those emotions that you don't love, like the anxiety or the fear or the self-doubt or self-criticism. Yep. We do get comfortable with that. And it's a story that we hold on to. And so, stepping into this place of, all is well, it can be really challenging for the mind because the mind is identified with who you are with that story. And you act from that place, right? Yes. And so when you start to release it, there can also be discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was super interesting because this one in particular for me was a story that I have around relationships and partnerships. And I'd gone on a date and I had felt a perceived sense of rejection. It wasn't even really rejection, but in my mind, I had perceived it. And this is a big narrative for me where it I take it very personally. And I was out and I talked to my inner voice and I said, do you want to go on another date with this person? And immediately, no. Is this my person? No. And so it really stopped me in my tracks because I love a good narrative about my self-worth based on what other people think about me. It's probably one of my biggest narratives. And so to just have my inner voice so quickly and decisively just be like, nope, that's not your person. And for me to realize, oh, you don't want to see this person again. So why are you letting yourself project your insecurities onto this person and have that say something about you instead of just saying, I'm okay and this isn't for me. And it really did help my day a lot. But it's, me, that's a big story I have for myself. So yeah, it was a great kind of moment for me to just be able to talk to my inner voice and know I was okay. And that was not a path for me.
And how powerful to make that decision from that place versus the ego fear, well, he doesn't like me, so I'm going to reject him place.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what it is. And I kept thinking like, my inner voice, it's your ego. This is your ego. And then to have it be like, no, this isn't right for me. And to let it go from that space is much better, like you said, because normally be like, oh, well, screw him. When in reality, it's okay. And it's none of my business what he's thinking. It really only matters what I'm thinking, right?
And what you're thinking about what he's thinking is really just a projection of your thoughts. You're throwing a beanbag at him.
Yes.
And blaming him for it.
Yes.
We throw our beanbags at people.
That is such a great visual for me. Just hurling beanbags at people as they walk down the street.
That's what happens in our society so often is we aren't educated and taught how to process our emotions. And so they build up and there are all these, Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. Michael Singer calls it thorns or ids. And there are these buttons. And then if people push our buttons, we take it, and that's why I love beanbags. We take them and we hit them with it. And it's like, I'm going to throw my pain at you. Instead of it really is your pain and it's your button because you might have that button and I might not. Yep. So someone could say the same thing to you and me in the same situation and you may react and I may not. Mm-hmm. So it just goes to further show you that those reactions are just a mirror to say beanbag alert. And now you get to process the beanbag, which is one thing that comes up in the sessions is like the trapped emotions, and we can process them on the calls and in the session. But then again, it's another tool of you can use this in everyday life. Like you can process a beanbag.
Yeah, I think I didn't realize, right? Because afterwards there weren't a lot of situations where I felt inclined to use it, I guess, that often. And like, in my joyful moments when I mentioned like running, I've used it, but it was really kind of a big moment because since our session, this was like the first really tough time I'd had. so I hadn't really gotten to utilize it in one of those situations. And so I started out my day, I had called my sister and my mom, and they could just tell I was really struggling. And by the end of the day, after I'd gone for my walk and I talked to my inner voice, there was just a noticeable difference. My sister, she's like, "Oh, you sound so much better." And I said, "I feel so much better." It's just, it seems so easy, but it's a habit, right? You're in the habit of making things hard. So for me, it didn't even really occur to me to do it. And I don't know if I actually wanted to do it at the beginning. I felt some resistance to talking to my inner voice because, like I said, I feel very comfortable in my habits. I've been doing them for 32 years. It's easy, air quotes, it's easy for me because that's what I know. And the harder thing seemed to just be to ask my inner voice because, I knew what it was going to say. Like, I know my inner voice now. I know what it's going to say and what it's going to think. And so, yeah, it was almost the harder thing for me, but it was just so easy to just tap into and say, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think about this situation?"
Yeah. And that's a great question always to ask our inner voices. Inner voice, what's your perspective on this? And I mean, you can ask it yes or no questions, but you can always ask open-ended ones because it will share. It will share. And yeah, it feels easier to not, because look, I teach this stuff. I work with this on a regular basis, and I still get in little things. And now even, John's like, "You need to go inward," my husband. And, I'll call a friend to like mentally talk something through, especially friends that really know me. And they're like, you have to ask your inner voice. I'm like, "I don't want to. Tell me the answer." Because I have resistance. Our minds, we all have the mind. And the purpose of this life is not to rid ourselves of the mind, unless it's your purpose. And then you'll know. Ask your inner voice. But the other habit we are in is overthinking. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. And it's also comfortable. But it wears you down. I mean, how much more energy would you expend talking this through and, throwing bean bags and like doing all this analyzing versus you ask the question?
Yeah, it's crazy. I spend so much of my day overthinking things that don't need to be. It's a conscious transition though. Like, it's going to take a little bit of time to just like consciously, which is interesting, right? Because we're trying to do less consciousness, but for a while to just get to that point where you are comfortable. And I think it's just, we're all going to have to relearn some very ingrained habits.
It's a muscle. I mean, right? It's a muscle that you have to work. Like with bowspring, when I would teach, when I first started and when I would have new people come in, it's like there's a big focus on like mounding the glutes and lifting the glutes up. And guess what? People didn't know how to activate their glutes.
Yep.
It's like, I don't know. I hear what you're saying, but nothing's happening down there. I don't understand. Yes. And then what do? We get resistance bands and we do exercises and we train the glutes to work. And then I can sit here as I am right now and mound and hover my glutes and they're strong and mounded and lifted. But that took practice. And just like anything, I mean, this going inward muscle, we're going against a well-worn path. We're going against societal expectations.
Yes. That's so interesting. Because what is your perception, Dan, of what people think of kind of the work that you're doing? And how does that impact you?
That's a good question because most of you who know me, I do definitely live in a bit of a bubble. Yes. So I am like blessed and just so grateful to be surrounded by people who are so in this stuff. Now, I still think what I'm doing is a little avant-garde for what they're doing. It's like a little bit further along, like going into this work, but there's a lot of talk about intuition. I mean, James Wedmore, like I'm a coach for him, like I'm a mentor, and like he's really into all this stuff, really into it. And so a lot of the people I look up to and I spend my time on a daily basis are already into this. Now, that being said, I also have quite a few scientists in my life, including my husband. And, a lot of people like Stacy that I'm attracted to, they're more of the analytical mind. And I feel like it's like Beyonce says.
I thought that you just brought it back to Beyonce.
The best revenge is your paper, right? I twirl on them haters, right? She has it, it's in her whole song. But the best revenge is your paper. And I mean, beyond that, what I see is like the best way I can explain this is by sharing my own story and by sharing other people's stories, because it doesn't make sense to the mind. And if you're not open and interested, in my mind, I'm like, well, then I'm not here to convince you. That's my role isn't to convince someone that this is the work. My role is to help the person who feels inclined and they feel an inkling. And I want to take them there because it's, again, how can this be easy? I don't want to have to convince you that this is real. I want you to feel the inkling and then me to take you and help guide you to go deeper, because that's fun and easy for me. And that's where I think the energy is most aligned and they're going to have the best experience. Right? I mean, you get what you look for. So if I have someone that wants a session or feels like they should do a session and their whole time they're like, I don't want this doesn't work. Well, then it's probably not going to work. Like Henry Ford says it, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And I live by that. I'm like, yeah, if you're not into it, then don't do it because it's not aligned.
Can we just acknowledge the fact that you quoted both Beyonce and Henry Ford in the same story, and nothing has ever made me happier than that.
Thank you.
You were certainly, I love you so much. That was great. But no, I think that's so true. Like even for me, I was very resistant to it, but there was still part of me that felt called to it. And I think kind of that's the beautiful spot, even for, obviously for people who are really, really called to it. But I think people who just like have that inkling that you mentioned, it can be so beneficial for them too, because I think as long as you're even a little bit open to it, the possibilities are kind of endless.
Yeah. And your inner voice is, for the most part, it's just waiting. It's always there. Like every time I talk to them, I'm like, are you there? Yes, always. Yes. But it's just waiting to be heard. And like, even my inner voice, when I hold a session, my inner voice is like, oh, we're so excited to have the stage. And here's what we want to share. And it's very bubbly. And it's there and it's waiting to be heard and to be handed the microphone. But you have to want to give the microphone to it. And I do, like, my preference is to work with people that are a little more on the mind spectrum versus the woo spectrum, because I want to introduce this work to people who, you've gotten to this point in your life where you're like, I feel like there's something more, but I don't know how to tap into that. And you can only do so much external consuming to like self-help yourself before you realize that that's not where the answers are going to lie. And that you're at some point, you're like, I do have to venture inward. And it's scary and I'm not sure what to expect. And I'm used to hearing my mind. And I feel like if I go to my inner voice, it's going to tell me I've done everything wrong. And I can't handle that because I hear that every day. I mean, what comes up, that's my perspective. Stace, what comes up for you? Like, what would have been the fear of hearing? Was there a fear of hearing from your inner voice, or did that not come up?
I don't think it was a fear of hearing from my inner voice. I think it was more just my mind loves to be in control. And I think from my mind, any threat to like not having that control is frightening for my mind. Because I just have some very painful stories that my mind is very comfortable in because it knows it well. And so, I think that's what it was for me, honestly.
Which totally makes sense. Yeah, the mind wants to be in control. And so this is putting in a situation where it can't be in control. And, some of the questions we ask, like, the mind doesn't know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really confusing for the mind because it's full of answers and questions.
It's so funny that you said that, Dan, because like when you said that we are always looking outside of ourselves, and it's just fascinating because I do think that there's value because, to a certain extent, but like there's $1 billion business now for self-help books, right? Or that entire industry. And again, I think that there is a lot of value there, but imagine what an industry focused on going inward could do. Like we've $1 billion industry that at the end of the day doesn't really, or for me at least, didn't create a lot of long-term change. I think looking outward like that without doing the inner work is kind of not pointless, but I think it's just less powerful, you know?
Well, it's certainly less empowering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Sorry,
And
do you like that giggle? I was like, yes.
I do. I liked your face too when you said that. And here's what, when you were doing that, I had my eyes closed and my inner voice said, they're merely stepping stones. So the self-help industry, it serves a purpose. It's stepping stones, and it
Yep.
helps open people up to the power of that. And, you know, we look at, gosh, so many of the people who are successful, they did follow their inner guidance and their intuition. And there's a lot of talk about intuition. In fact, I do believe I need to do a full podcast episode because my own understanding of this is literally in the process of forming. Is intuition is like the nudges, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
inspired action. And that is part of your inner voice. And it is your inner voice, but it's the part that shows up when it needs to show up. So it kind of shows up unexpectedly. Like you people say, well, my intuition, I just had this like this desire to turn right and I ran into my friend, or like I didn't go on. I mean, we've heard many stories. Like I didn't go to that place and the bank got robbed or some weird thing like that. They're following their intuition, the nudges. But that's like the tip of the iceberg, because the inner voice says you can have these ongoing conversations. And so you're speaking, and again, that's what we do in the sessions, is she's speaking as her inner voice. And so then she might feel the nudges while she's on a run to turn right or left, but she could also ask herself and have the conversation. So it takes it a step further than just being tuned in to your own intuition.
That's so fascinating, Dan. Like I've never thought about that before, but that makes so much sense. It's like, yeah, the intuition is almost like that little precursor where it's your inner voice talking to you a little bit without you really tapping into it. And if you just imagine how great you feel when you have those intuitive moments that just feel right, and then being able to access those all the time.
Yes, and that's the whole point, right? It's always available to you. And I feel like a lot of people have this idea, and I could be wrong, but that intuition shows up on its own will and we don't have as much say. And I'm saying, no, you always have access. Like it is an unlimited source of information for you. It's just changing the channel.
Yep. And I think, like you said before, it just comes down to trust. Like once you get to that place, like my inner voice never tells me something that I question. Like not one time have I asked a question and then been like, that doesn't seem right. I always just have full confidence and trust that my inner voice, that's what it is. You know, I go for a run. I think, do I need to slow down? And it says yes. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to speed up. I think, no, okay, slow down. It is. So it's just, yeah, that's so fascinating, Dan.
That's really powerful, Stacey, too, that you feel that, because I mean, that's a testament to your experience in the session and how much you got out of it. Because I mean, you could have a session and still want to question your inner voice. I mean, people do it. I get mad at my inner voice. I'll be like, it'll tell me something. I'm like, I get it, but I
This
want
is
more.
this is so funny because like I feel, and I don't know if you feel like this, but I always felt like no matter what, my inner voice is there for my greater good. Like I've never asked a question where I felt like it wasn't responding or acting in my best interest, even if it wasn't something that maybe my mind wanted to hear, right? And so I think that now I have this implicit trust in it because I know it's always guiding me towards the right thing, even if my mind doesn't want to accept or process that. I just have this innate trust in it now, no matter what. Do you not feel like that with or do you feel like that with yours too?
Oh, I totally feel like that. I mean, it has my best interest in mind. And it's only my mind that will be like, I know you said breathe and receive, but I'm sick of breathing and receiving. And
Yes.
right, the mind will start demanding. And then, you know, the inner voice, it's such a delight because it will be playful and
Mm-hmm.
it'll give you what you need in that moment. It'll give you the guidance. And there is that deep sense of trust.
Yeah, it's funny because like I don't think I've ever experienced that with anything else in my life. And I think can you trust anything more than you trust your own inner voice?
I don't know. I mean, we could ask our inner voices that question.
It's an easy one.
It's here for you to see and be. There's nothing more that you need from me. That's hilarious. My inner voice loves to rhyme, but and I laugh halfway through because I hear it. There's nothing more to see and be your inner. Wait, I forgot what it said.
No, I can't remember either. I think there's nothing more to see or be. Something that nothing more.
Oh, that's all you need to hear from me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I just imagine your inner voice similar to you in that it dances a lot to Beyonce. Just a lot of dancing. That's what I imagine your inner voice doing on a almost constant basis. Just a lot of dancing.
Yeah. It always tells me I can dance more. And it wants me to hug trees.
Oh,
and color with chalk. I had a session. It was we need chalk. And I did not order chalk. I did order the crayons per my inner voice's request, but I did not order the chalk yet. See, guys, we still have free will, right? This is the whole thing. You're the observer, right? You get to tune your channel. So my inner voice can be we want chalk. Please color with chalk. And I can be I'm not doing the chalk, but I'll get the crayons. So we get the guidance. You don't have to choose to follow it. But what you'll find, I imagine, or I know, right, over time is the more you follow it, the more you're going to get what you are wanting and what you're needing.
Yep. Because it's always there for your best interest, always.
Yeah. Always and forever. Okay, Stace.
Yes.
So
Oh, gosh.
No. If you could describe, I'm just curious, your experience. You've described it so beautifully, and I'm so grateful for you. But if you could distill it down, maybe if your inner voice could distill it down to one word, what would you experience? What would you say?
So quick. That was so quick. Transformative.
Oh, thanks, inner voices, Stacy. Do you have any questions you want your inner voice to answer right now?
It said not at this time. It's very formal. It's very formal right now.
Isn't that sweet? But again, why would I ask Stacy's mind when I can ask her inner voice?
Sorry, my mind's gonna answer something, but my inner voice said, "I'm happy just listening."
Oh, we're happy you're listening to inner voice. Thank you for being present with us.
It's been so much fun. Aw, that's cute.
I'm gonna get tearful again. Okay, so mind of Stacy, is there anything else you want to share? We've gotten your inner voice's comments.
No, I told you this before too. I'm just so proud of the work that you're doing, and I just hope that if anyone's even a little bit interested, that they just take the leap and reach out, because coming from a former skeptic, it's one of the best experiences I've had. And I just encourage anyone, if you're even feel a little bit called to it, to just explore it, because you never know what beautiful things it can bring to your life. So just take a leap and try it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Stace. I'm so grateful for you, y'all. I don't have a website for Stacy. She's just a friend. She's not a business owner. She's not a coach. She's just a wonderful woman. So I'm not going to send you anywhere, but I'll tag her on Instagram when we share this episode. So thank you, Stace, so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And as always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tuning In podcast. As always, if this would resonate with anyone you know, please share the episode. You can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans, or find me on my website at alignful.com.